Hear the bells ringing, Christmas is near. They ring out to tell the whole world this is the season of cheer. And I hear the choir singing sweetly somewhere. The song they sing brings joy to the world as they sing Christmas is near. Oh, why can't every day be like Christmas? Why can't that feeling go on endlessly? For every day we're just like Christmas. What a wonderful world this would be. And I hear the child telling Santa what to bring. A smile upon his tiny face is worth more to me than anything. Why can't every day be like Christmas? Why can't that feeling go on endlessly? If every day we're just like Christmas, what a wonderful world this would be.
Good morning, everybody. I'm recording a song here in my apartment office just before leaving for my father-in-law's memorial service, very small family-only service coming up this weekend. And Garet shared with me what his subject is today about choosing joy. And I thought of a couple songs, and I don't know where in the order this one's going to be. But of all people, this is a song by Jimmy Buffett. It's not Margaritaville, which is a song about joy in a completely different context. But Buffett wrote this song after Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans in 2005 as a way of helping folks there breathe in, breathe out, and move on and make choices that prove to be for the betterment of their community. I heard it just a couple years ago and just fell in love with it. And so a couple little lyric changes, but this is called Breathe In, Breathe Out, Move On by Jimmy Buffett. I bought a cheap watch from a crazy man floating down canal. It don't use numbers or thinking that I was had. But this watch is never wrong. If I have trouble, the warranty says, breathe in, breathe out, move on. And it rains, but that's nothing really new. It blows, but we've seen that before. It pours, and the earth begins to strain. Joy and pain leaking through the door. If the storm doesn't leave you dead, it will make you strong. Don't try to explain it, just nod your head. Breathe in, breathe out, move on. And it rains, but that's nothing really new. And it blows, we've seen all that before. And it pours, and the earth begins to strain. That's joy and pain leaking through the door. According to my watch, the time is now. The past is dead and gone. Don't try to shake it, just nod your head. Breathe in, breathe out, move on. And it rains, but that's nothing really new. It blows, we've seen that before. It pours, and the earth begins to strain. Joy and pain leaking through the door. Don't try to explain it, just bow your head. Breathe in, breathe out, move on.
Hey, I'm Nicole Witt, and Merry Christmas to everybody at Simple Faith. Bobby Raines asked me to sing a song this Sunday, and I had something completely different prepared. And as songwriters do, I wrote a song today, and so I'm going to sing that song instead. And it pretty much wraps up everything that I've wanted to say for about a year now. So, Simple Faith, everybody there, keep your eyes, look up. May we all heal next year. May we be love and light and hope and peace to a very broken world. Let it be us.
Christmas night's too bright, Santa made his flight, but the quiet's so loud in this house. Got a new give a little time to the loved ones in our life and remember what family is for. Everyone is gathering, here comes the final countdown. I have just one wish, can I see the with a kiss? Yeah, it is midnight. I hope the world stops for a moment and just think of all the hearts that they're holding. Oh, hate and hurt will disappear, and the past will be the past. And I know your joy and peace will meet us there. This is my New Year's. This is my only prayer for next year. This is my New Year prayer.
Good morning and welcome to a Simple Faith stream service. It is December 27th, 2020, the last Sunday of 2020. Can I get an amen? Woo! Here with me today is we have Spruce Springsteen back for another appearance. I had to get him in one last time. If you've been watching on Wednesday night, you know exactly who he is. If you have not been watching on Wednesday night, you think this is just a really weird thing to bring up. So I'll take it either way, I suppose. Ronnie is away for the weekend. He and his family are up in northern Georgia. They were supposed to have a memorial service for George Cooper, Cindy's father, who recently passed away, but due to Ronnie's sister-in-law being a nurse at the hospital, she was exposed to COVID, so they had to push that back to the spring. But nevertheless, they're up there enjoying themselves away for Christmas, and be in prayer for Ronnie as he has a bout of shingles. It's very painful. He's been texting me about it. I've been trying to share GIFs with him to make him laugh and make him less make the whole situation less sufferable. But nevertheless, here we are. Happy that you can join us today. In light of the year 2020, I figured there's no better way to spend our last Sunday of 2020 talking about joy. So today's message is titled Choosing Joy. Like any good pastor with any kind of title, usually they give you a subtitle to kind of share a little bit more of the direction of where they're taking the message. So here's mine. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. And here we go. Choosing joy. Taking the hard things we've experienced and allowing it to shape and reframe the way we look at life and its fragility in order to experience joy in its simplicity while being present in the moment. I think I might write a book titled Choosing Joy with that exact subtitle that takes up the whole entire cover. But that's what we're talking about this morning. We're talking about life, the things we experience, the hard things, and how to take those things and turn it to the positive in order to choose joy. And in light of the things that we've experienced and understanding that life is hard, but we have one life, so we might as well choose joy. In a year that has seen increasing numbers of infections and deaths due to COVID, we've had a year where we've had a lot of funerals. We've had loved ones that have perished due to sickness, diseases, cancer, accidents. We've seen the tipping point of racial tension and the ongoing conversations in light of that. dealing with race issues in America that have really plagued us since the foundation of America, even before it was laid. We've seen political upheaval in the midst of a bitter presidential election. We've seen both sides of that fighting back and forth. We've seen the feeling of isolation and loneliness due to lockdowns and quarantine, and Christmas obviously being a tough time for families that have not been able to travel or see one another. So we've been dealing with that. There's the inability for people to really travel and see places that they hope to see this year. But yet here we are, the last Sunday of 2020. We're alive, we've survived, and we're breathing. And I know this year has been tough for a lot of different reasons, and the baggage from this year that we're going to have to carry with us moving forward is going to be burdensome. But I believe that in time, this load will be lightened as things progress and move forward to a new normal. But, in this moment, yes, things still feel heavy. But I believe as long as we have breath in our lungs and the ability to put one foot in front of the other, we also have the ability to choose joy. Now, Rodney and I went to a presentation a couple years ago up in Birmingham. We went to see former pastor and author Rob Bell, and he shared a presentation on the introduction to joy. And really, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, but we walked away that evening just feeling refreshed and enlightened in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that Bell shared, and I'll be sharing a bunch of different things that he shared that night. It's just so valuable, and you could actually catch the introduction to joy video on YouTube. But one of the things he kicked off his presentation sharing, and that caught me off guard, is he said cynicism is easy because it's actually quite lazy, because it doesn't go far enough. Essentially, he's saying, and we're going to unpack this a little bit, but it's essentially he's saying it's easy to be critical of things because it doesn't allow room for heaviness and to dig deep into that. There's no experience with that. It's just super easy to sit back and be critical. But in talking about joy, he shares that joy, it's different than happy, because happy generally exists in a binary with sad, or a duality of you're happy or you're sad. But joy, it's completely different. Joy has plenty of room for anger, loss, betrayal, heartache, depression, and despair. Joy doesn't avoid these things. It doesn't repress these things. It doesn't deny it. What it does is it wraps its arms around the full spectrum of the human experience and handles it all. It seems, especially in light of 2020, it seems like every day, either we or someone we know, that we're a witness to pain, we're a witness to loss and suffering or betrayal. And sometimes we have the front row seat to some of the most painful and gut-wrenching and agonizing experiences that human beings can go through. And in the midst of that, we start to wonder, how can we be present here now and enjoy life when we or someone else we know has just experienced something so difficult? How can we live in a world that can break your heart as quickly as it does and have any semblance of joy? Is that even possible? In Brené Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, she shares that pain it's unrelenting. It will get our attention, and despite our attempts to drown it in addiction, or to physically beat it out of one another, or to suffocate it with success and material possessions, or to strangle it with our hate, pain will find a way to make itself known. She continues on, pain will only subside when we acknowledge and care for it. Sometimes owning our pain and bearing witness to struggle means getting angry. And when we deny ourselves the right to be angry, we deny our pain. She shares that anger is actually catalyst, and holding on to it will make us exhausted and sick. Internalizing it will take away our joy and our spirit. Externalizing anger will make us less effective in our attempts to create change and forge connection with other people. She shares that it's an emotion that if we give it room to transform, we can transform it into something life-giving, such as courage and love and change and compassion and justice. She also shares that if we choose not to transform it, it can mask itself in a far more difficult emotion like grief or regret or shame, and we need to use it to dig into what we're really feeling. Either way, anger is a powerful catalyst, but a life-sucking companion. And that's what we experience sometimes. We may have had multiple experiences of this in the past month, especially in this past year. But I share these things because it gives perspective into this idea of choosing joy. Now, to continue on, I think there's no better place to turn than the book of Ecclesiastes, where it talks about everything is meaningless, to talk about joy. So the author of Ecclesiastes is unknown. They like to attribute it to Solomon because of how it's written, the things that the writer talks about. Can easily be attributed to Solomon. Solomon being an extravagant king, having everything. It makes sense in light of that, but nevertheless, as you read through the book of Ecclesiastes, the writer references himself as teacher, so we'll just go with that. So the book of Ecclesiastes has this wonderful ebb and flow of scripture, in which the teacher essentially says, life is meaningless. There's so much that we do in life that has no purpose. It's better to just eat, drink, and be happy. So we're going to share, I'm going to share a couple different passages with you to kind of dig into this and really get to the heart of the darkness and heaviness that we feel and how we can experience and choose joy in light of that. So the teacher of Ecclesiastes says, meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. How many of us have felt that this year? All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly, but I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these, the righteous perishing in their righteousness and the wicked living long in their wickedness. It's really as if the teacher is saying, I've lived life long enough. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. I've seen all of it. I experienced most of it. And let me tell you something. It's meaningless. Because guess what? Good people die young, and horrible people live a long time. I've seen this happen. It's as if the teacher is saying, let me disabuse you of the notion that there's any direct correlation between how good you are and how long you live, because there's none. Rob Bell shared in this introduction to joy presentation this beautiful analogy or word definition. He says that in the ancient Hebrew, the word for meaningless is actually havel, which can be translated as vapor or mist. So as you're reading through this, meaningless, vapor-like, meaningless, like a mist. It's all like a vapor or mist. It's here 1 second and gone the next. It's as if Ecclesiastes is trying to say your life is short. It's like a vapor. It's like a mist. And all you're trying to do is manage it. Furthermore, the Ecclesiastes reads in chapter 9, the teacher says, go, in light of the fact that life is short, go and eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart. Enjoy life all the days of this meaningless, vapor-like life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless or vapor-like days. Because it's so vapor-like, because it's so short and fragile, that while you're here, you should probably enjoy it, because there are way less guarantees than anybody told us. In chapter 6, the writer of Ecclesiastes says, I've seen another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily on mankind. God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor, so that they lack nothing their heart desires. But God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them, and strangers enjoy them instead. This is meaningless, a grievous evil. It's as if the teacher is saying, I'll tell you what's horrible, is to be surrounded by such goodness, but unable to access it or enjoy it. So imagine this in light of modern days, in modern terms. Imagine a society that has more luxuries, wealth, technologies, and options than any civilization in the history of humanity, and yet more people are stressed, depressed, worried, anxious, and unable to enjoy all of that abundance. Does that remind you of someplace close? Perhaps something, like our culture that we're living in? Imagine that. To be surrounded by so much luxury and technology and the ability to really enjoy life, but the teacher of Ecclesiastes is telling us, look, all of these things are meaningless. We have all this stuff, but yet we seem so unhappy. Imagine that. So in light of this, the teacher or the writer of Ecclesiastes says in chapter 8, so I commend the enjoyment of life, because there is nothing better for a person under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. And then joy will accompany them in their toil all the days of their life. God has given them under the sun. So what Ecclesiastes does is it offers us a wisdom, of a different wisdom of perspective for those who have brushed up against the unpredictability of life, and shows us how fragile and tenuous it actually is. It's as if it's saying, and it comes in and says this whole thing is barely hanging on by a thread. It's so wobbly, and that there are way less guarantees than anybody told us. And then so much of it is unpredictable that we don't know if tomorrow is going to happen. And being good isn't going to guarantee any more days than being bad. So, right now, you might as well enjoy it, because this is all we get. I love what Rob Bell shared in this presentation as well, when he said, when things are fragile, when we recognize that this thing is so, wobbly and barely hanging on by a thread, he shared that what it does, what that fragility reminds us of, is it shows us just how fragile it really is. That it's just barely hanging on. And it acknowledges that there's heaviness. It acknowledges that there's sorrow. It acknowledges that there's heartbreak and pain. And choosing joy is something that embraces that. It recognizes that and says, I get it. I understand. I've seen it. I've experienced it. But I've moved on through that darkness out the other side, and I can be grateful because I have a better perspective. That's what choosing joy does. And that's what fragility does. It reminds us of the heaviness, but also shows us just how important it is to choose joy here and now. Now, there's a lighter side of life that doesn't recognize sorrow, pain, and heartbreak. You could call it ignorance. You could call it naivety. That really, it's for people that have yet to experience brokenness and pain and heartache in different ways. But 2020 has kind of pushed all of us as American culture and society into this realm where we've had to sit here with some of the pains and heartbreak of what our country has done to itself. These ongoing conversations, if we're open-minded, if we've been able to see and talk to and experience on behalf of others the difficult things that other people have gone through. And really, so we've had to sit here, for some of us, before having these conversations, we were ignorant to the idea that racial tension and racial bias and these things are a big deal. But when you sit down with someone, a person of color, and have these conversations, it's a real experience. So there's the naive side of it, the ignorant side of it that doesn't know any better. But as we've experienced this year, we've kind of been forced into that position of going, yeah, this is real. This is heavy stuff. And on the other side of that is informed lightness. It's able to look back and say, okay, I have a better perspective, a better idea, a better understanding. I'm better as a person in light of having gone through that. And what the heaviness does is it alerts us to the vapor-like nature of all of this experience that we're having, that it's so short. And it's so important that we choose joy. In informed lightness, on the other side of that heaviness, tells us, yeah, I know how bad it is, and that's why I'm going to enjoy it. You see, joy is not threatened by the hard things. Joy actually wraps its arms around it all. It doesn't avoid it. It embraces it. Then it shows why it's so important to enjoy it now. And that's why cynicism is easy and lazy, as Bell says, because all it does is it dips its toe into the heaviness, but never actually enters into it. It sits back on its phone and throws mean insults at other people, but never having experienced what they're going through, never putting themselves in another person's shoes. It's easy to be a cynic. It's easy to be critical. We could be, critical of 2020. The common phrase now is, "Oh, it's 2020." We tend to throw that around a lot. To be honest with you, just the nature of, it's recognizing, things happen, bad things happen. It's easy to do that and not enter into, wow, this is going on in your life. That's hard. And what joy does is it recognizes that and it embraces that and says, that is hard. And, life is difficult. And this is all we have. And it's going to be difficult for a while, but as we move forward, it will get better in time. But if you sit there and just be critical, it's not. You have to choose joy. Brene Brown shares further in her book on joy. She says that joy matters, and it's okay to experience moments of joy even when there's darkness in the lives of other people. Now, this is difficult for some of us to understand. How could I experience joy when they're going through that? She says that joy recognizes and embraces the darkness and has the ability to look into it with empathy, but also has the ability to see that and know that life is short and that hard things happen, but we can't let that stop us from having life-giving moments. And this tends to happen to us where we look at a situation going on in someone else's life and we choose to kind of sit back and idle and not do anything valuable. This year has done that to us. In quarantining, when it first happened, I remember back in late March of asking the question, well, what do we do with our time? And, being as young as we are with young kids, it wasn't long before we said, well, let's make the most of it. Let's control what we can control and try to have fun, whatever that looks like, and enjoy this time together that we may not ever have again. There's choosing joy in these difficult moments. But it's easy to be critical and cynical and sit back and go, well, this is just sucky. I can't do anything about this. I'm just going to sit at home and worry about life. And that doesn't do anything. But joy, you can still experience joy even when there's difficult things happening. And the key to enjoy our experiencing joy is having gratitude. Brene also shares that when you are grateful for what you have, I know you understand the magnitude of what I lost. The more we diminish our own pain or rank it compared to what others have survived, the less empathetic we are to everyone. That when we surrender our own joy to make those in pain feel less alone or to make ourselves feel less guilty or seem more committed, we deplete ourselves of what it takes to feel fully alive and fueled by purpose. The goal is to get to the place where we can think, I am aware of what's happening, the part I play and how I can make it better, but that doesn't mean I have to deny the joy in my life. And that is so critical, I think, that just because there are difficult things happening, we need to be empathetic, and having gratitude enhances that need to be empathetic, to share with people, life is hard. I understand that, and I love you, and I will do anything I can for you. But you have to say this to yourself. I can't deny myself from having joy or experiencing life to the fullest, because there is no guarantee. As Ecclesiastes says, there's so much unpredictability in it all. It's so quick that if we deny ourselves life-giving moments, we're denying ourselves joy. If we deny ourselves joy at the expense of another person, that's what Brene Brown is saying. That's what we have to escape from. We can't deny pain or loss or any of these things. That's the heaviness. But we have to show that we're grateful for life by peering into that and choosing joy in our own life and showing empathy toward those that are going through something difficult and showing love to them. And by being joyful, I believe that shows compassion and love and enhances it in their own life to show them that there is something more to live for. There is something bigger to live for. There is still purpose even when things are hard. Stu Krieger, a professor of screen and television writing at the University of California, shared in a TED Talk that joy is the feeling that comes from deep in your gut when you celebrate and appreciate the gift that is your life. And I think that sums up exactly what we're talking about. Joy is something worth celebrating and experiencing and appreciating, that your life is worth living, that this is all we have. Now, James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 shares that we should consider it pure joy when we face trials of many kinds, because what it does is it when we persevere in those things, it produces a character. It produces a person that has empathy. It produces a person that understands. It produces a person that when they sit in the muck and the difficulties and the heaviness and they work through that, it allows them to appreciate the things that they've gone through, and it allows them to appreciate what other people are going through. And it shows us just how important life is when we can persevere and come out the other side. And it requires breaking through. It doesn't require trying to find a way around or over or under, but it's a wrestling and grappling with the very thing we'd rather curse. So when we consider it pure joy to go through these difficult things, what does it produce in us? I believe it produces a sense of perspective. It gives us an awareness and an emotional connection to those who have a similar or shared experience. It allows us to empathize, to recognize the gift that life is, to better understand situations in the future as well. It produces a stronger, more refined version of ourselves that we never knew existed until we went through that thing we went through. That's the point and purpose in all this, isn't it? To become a better version of ourselves. Yes, life is hard. Yes, 2020 has been difficult. Yes, circumstances can be better or could be better. But deep down you know and you recognize that life is still valuable, that life is still worth living, and life is still worth being grateful for, that there's joy to be found in all of it. So, choose it. Choose joy. Now, Ronnie shared a couple of months ago, and this is something I think worth sharing. He shared something a few months ago when we broke the $100,000 giving mark. And so I wanted to share with you all, talking about choosing joy and being grateful and being empathetic towards others in need and recognizing the heaviness of life. 2020, as we are all aware, has been really hard for people. And so I asked Susan about a week and a half ago to share some information with me about giving for the year 2020. And I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. In a year that has seen so much unpredictability and chaos, we have seen an abundance of people being grateful and sharing out of the love of their heart. As of last Sunday, the total giving to A Simple Faith was nearly $500,000. And since COVID began, and since the quarantine and lockdowns and everything began, from March until December, just last Sunday, giving was $403,312. So giving has been absolutely phenomenal, and we're blown away because we didn't know what to anticipate or expect. But this just goes to show that you're choosing joy. You're choosing to live for other people in doing this. And what it's allowed us to do is to give back in ways that we never anticipated or that we had set out to do originally. But once this all happened, at the very beginning of this whole thing, Ronnie shared, we are not going to hoard our money and wait out of fear of what could happen. Instead, we're going to set aside money in the account as a reserve, and everything above that, we're going to do our best to help others in need. So I'm excited to share with you that as of last Sunday, so this could be updated still, as of last Sunday, we have given nearly $150,000 to organizations and various individuals in groups of people, which is just, it's absolutely incredible to think about the fact that we've received as A Simple Faith nearly $500,000, yet we've given away nearly $150,000. Now, this is local charities, this is local missions. If you're curious about some of these groups, by all means, reach out to me. I'd love to share that information with you. But we've given $123,000 to organizations around here and nearly $25,000 to individuals or people in need that reached out to us. So this is just absolutely incredible. I think this is a good note to end on in the year that has been just so wild that we've chosen to be conduits of God's love. We've chosen joy instead of living in fear and heartache and all the heaviness. And while that has happened and we've experienced that, we've come out the other side and said, I've seen it all. And it's difficult, but guess what? Life is worth living. This is what we have, and we're going to do something awesome with it. I can't wait to see what 2021 holds. Hopefully it's a better year than 2020, but if anything, 2020 has taught me is that there's joy to be found, even in the hard things, that we can choose it, and we can allow those difficult things to shape us and form us in a good way if we choose to do so. Thanks, guys. Have a blessed week, and by the time you see us again, it'll be a new year, so Happy New Year. God bless. We love you.
There is joy in the journey. There's a light we can love on the way. There is a wonder and wildness to life, freedom for those who obey. All those who seek it shall find it, pardon for all who believe, hope for the hopeless, sight for the blind. To all those who born of the Spirit, who share the Lord's life with Him, belong to eternity, stranded in time, weary of struggling within, forgetting not the hope that's before you, Never stop counting the cost. Remember the hopelessness when you were lost. All those who seek it shall find it. Pardon for all who believe. Hope for the hopeless, sight for the blind. There